That's not doing anything. Supposed to do this one?
Is it turned on?
Try that. Does that work? There we go. You have to turn these things on? Okay. In the book of Joshua. The emphasis of the lesson this quarter is grace and redemption in the book of Joshua. Did anybody catch what they skipped in this week's lesson? We went from Joshua 2, Rahab, Joshua 3, the crossing the Jordan, and the capture at in 4 and 5, and then the capture of Jericho. But we skipped chapter 7 and chapter 8 and went on to chapter 9, which was the story of the Gibeonites. Now, what's in chapter 7 and 8?
The sin of Achan?
Achan and the destruction of Ai. Two, let's see, what do I say? Unsavory instances, grisly. In the destruction of Ai, there were 12,000 men and women who were killed. Now, it doesn't say what happened to the children, but they were sent into the city of Ai to destroy it and told to kill everyone there. Now, as I say, it doesn't mention the children, but it says 12,000 men and women. And the story of Achan and killing of him and his family. Not the most pleasant circumstances. But we skipped over those, and we start out with the story of Rahab. Now, Rahab's story is in Joshua 2, and then it follows through for 3 chapters there, where through the destruction of Jericho. Jericho is 15 miles east of Jerusalem, headed downhill down toward the Jordan River and toward the Dead Sea. It's much lower altitude than Jerusalem. It has a almost tropical climate because it's so low. It's way below sea level. In Jericho, we think in our heads, well, it must have been a big city, you know, for all the hoopla to destroy it. Jericho was not that big. How big was Jericho? Anybody know? Thousands? Anybody know? Between 8 and 10 acres. That's not a huge city. You know, I've got a field behind my house about that size. Between 8 and 10 acres. How many people could live in a city of 8 to 10 acres? Few hundred?
Maybe 1,000, maybe.
Maybe 1,000? Hard to say.
Yeah.
It's not like we're talking a city of 50,000 or 100,000 or something like that. You know, we're talking a city of 8 to 10 acres. It was a walled city, quite well protected, but not all that big. And Joshua sent 2 spies out to check out the land. And what did they find?
Okay.
What report did they bring back? Good stuff? Did Did they give, okay, let's go back to the first spying out of the land 40 years earlier, when they sent out 12 spies, and 10 of them came back and said what?
Well, they all agreed that the land was good.
Land was good. What did they bring back to show that, how nice it was?
Grapes.
Grapes and produce. But the report was,
But they couldn't.
Giants, they had the giants.
yep, two of them said we can do it, and 10 of them said no way, no way. So Joshua sent out, you know, this is 40 years later. Now, he had been one of the two spies the first time out 40 years earlier, and he sends out spies again. Now, why did he do that? Did he need to know what it was like? He'd been there. He had been there. He knew what was there. So why did he send out these two spies? Why didn't he just say, well, I know what it's like there, so let's go do it?
Time had passed.
Excuse me?
Time had passed.
Time had passed.
Gotta check it out again.
Yeah, check it out. Is it a political move to get people oriented to understand what the situation is, or to get it from somebody else's word other than from his?
It also might have been a test of their faith.
Test of their faith? Okay. He already knew what was there. In 40 years, yeah, things have probably changed. But he'd been there. And 40 years have passed, and he's saying, well, okay, let's try this again. And he sends out just 2 spies this time instead of 12. And they came back with a report, oh, we can easily take this city. Well, okay, how large a report did they bring back? Did they report on everything that they had found in the whole area? No. Did these 2 spies, did they check out all the cities in the area and the hill country and everything?
Probably not.
Doesn't say that they did. And what's the report that they brought back?
Well, they said in verse 24, it said, truly the Lord hath delivered into our hands all the land, for even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of it.
Okay. And where did they get that? How did they formulate that opinion?
From Rahab.
Hmm?
From the lady they stayed with,
Yeah, from Rahab.
Rahab.
Okay, so the first spies went out and they looked at all the land. They traversed the area and came back with a report of the whole thing. And they had seen everything there, and they gave the report and said, no, you can't do it. These 2 spies went out and they spent a night with a prostitute in her house and came back and said, yes, we can do it on the basis of the testimony of Rahab. My, how things have changed. The harlot becomes the heroine of the story, and on her testimony, they bring back the report and said, yes, we can take this. It's already ours. Now, how did Rahab formulate her opinion?
Imagine she got a lot of information from
Excuse me?
her business.
Well, okay, all right, yeah, okay, I hadn't thought of that, yes, she must have heard, yeah, somebody must have been talking.
Well, that was it, because she had shared with the 2 spies everything that she had heard.
Right,
And they were afraid of what they would do to them if they came there. And that was why she hid them as soon as she saw them.
Right, right. And shortly after they got there, somebody came looking for them, right? Now, realize that this is a city of 8 to 10 acres, walled city. You have to come in through a gate and out through a gate. Do you think it would be possible for two foreigners to come into a city that size and nobody noticed, nobody knew they were there? Not likely. It wouldn't be the kind of, it wouldn't be like going into a big city and you could get lost in the crowds, you know. Somebody would have known they were there and known where they went, and they sent out some troops there looking for them, and Rahab defended them. You hate to say she lied. You want to say she defended them. That's putting a positive slant on it. But the fact of the matter is that she did not tell the truth. And the result was that she saved the lives of the two spies, and in the process made a deal that saved her life and her family when the city was taken. There had to have been some pretty vivid stories told to her about these Israelites. Because she had already made up her mind before these guys came in that you know, our city is lost to them. And she's ready to surrender what she can in order to save herself. Let's see. She is praised for her faith. And how did she get her faith? She heard all the stories, the testimonies of maybe customers, who knows. Anyway, word got around quite well that these Israelites were not to be laughed at. Bill?
She probably thought she'd be a lot better off under the rule of Israel than she would be where she was at that time too.
Okay. Would somebody read for me Romans 10:17? Romans 10:17.
So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God.
Okay. Where'd she get her faith? She had heard the stories about God's people, and she believed, and she acted on it. The Israelites were given a second chance. They'd been given a chance 40 years earlier, and they blew it. They muffed it. And here's their second chance. Now, how many chances does God give us?
More than we deserve.
More than we deserve. 70 times 7, or many times. Someone said justice is when you get what you deserve. Mercy is when you don't get what you deserve. And grace is when you get what you don't deserve. You have to roll that around in your mind a little bit to play with that. But grace is when you get what you don't deserve. Okay. um, All right, Rahab lied to save the two spies, but also to save herself. Now, we also have in the lesson the story of the Gibeonites. And they lied to save themselves. Little different perspective, but both when the truth was bent to justify the means, however you want to say that. And Rahab was saved, she and her family, and they became part of the nation of Israel. In fact, Rahab in, let's see, where's the verse in is it Hebrews? No, it's in Matthew 1 verse 5, is that?
Genealogy.
In the genealogy, Matthew 1 verse 5. Anyone have that? Have their finger on it?
Yeah, and Salmon begat Boaz of Rachab, that must be her, huh?
Right. Okay. So Rahab becomes an ancestor of Jesus because she's latched into the tribe of Israel because of what she did to save these two spies in Jericho. Now, I have a question that's in the back of my mind, and I don't have an answer for it. Nowhere else in the Old Testament is the name of Rahab mentioned. The story is in Joshua 2. And Matthew in his genealogy happens to say, well, by the way, Rahab, the prostitute, she was the mother-in-law of Ruth and an ancestor of Jesus. Now, if the only written record of Rahab that we have is in Joshua, and we know that she was accepted into the nation of Israel, where does that information come from that she was the mother-in-law of Ruth and an ancestor of Jesus? Because Matthew picked up on that, 1800 years later. And that's the question in the back of my mind, and maybe nobody else has thought about it, maybe nobody else is worried about it. But I can't answer that. Oral tradition. Who told Matthew that Rahab was the mother-in-law of Ruth and became an ancestor of Christ?
Was it not written down somewhere?
There's nothing in the Bible.
Nothing that we have today.
Nothing we have today. There's nothing in the Bible that tells us that.
It doesn't bother me, I think it's wonderful, actually.
It's an interesting element because generally speaking, if we had a prostitute in our family tree, we would tend to skip over that part. Let's face it, you know. Most of us generally would like to leave out the less than favorable details. And somehow, she got included in there. And I don't know how. Yes,
I
Lana?
think they kept records because when they came back from Babylon, if they wanted to be priests, they had to have a written record of their ancestry. If they couldn't prove it, then they couldn't be priests.
That may be.
So I
Maybe.
guess
Good point.
it's,
A good point. Somewhere, somebody passed that information down so that they knew. I don't know how. Anyway, let's see here. there were plenty of stories about the Israelites, the stories of crossing the Red Sea, and then the story of crossing the Jordan River. Those stories apparently had gotten to Rahab, and along with their overtaking of a couple of other tribes along the way. Rahab gave some, said go out and look for them. They've left here, which they hadn't, and it says that the troops went to the east toward the Jordan River, and she sent the spies to the west into the hill country. And there were caves up in the hill country outside of Jericho, so places that they could hide. And they hung there for a few days till things cooled off.
And that's,
Yes.
in chapter 2 there in verse 11, she tells them that as soon as we heard these things that they had done, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and earth beneath. So they were already waiting for them to come along. They knew it was just a matter of time.
Okay.
And they didn't want to fight at all.
Right.
So they're like, as soon as you see them, let us know.
Right.
'Cause that'll be the end of us.
Right, yeah, okay, okay. You might draw a parallel with Ukraine and Russia. Russia gathered their troops on the border of Ukraine, and everybody said, well, Ukraine, they just might as well surrender because there's no way that they're going to be able to fight off Russia. And yet they've been hammering them back and forth here for a couple of years at that, and the logical perspective would be to look at that and say, you might as well give up before you start, because there's no way you can beat Russia. But that's another story. How great a faith did Rahab have?
I mean, I think there's more to the whole story than maybe we have record of, because she's listed in the Hall of Faith in
Right.
chapter 11 of Hebrews, and you look at that and you can think, man, there must have been a lot more people we could put in that slot,
Okay,
other than Rahab, but she's listed there for
Right.
a reason.
right. And we tend to look at people and idolize them or canonize them because of one event or something that they have done. Charlie Kirk was praised by a lot of Adventists because he understood something about the Sabbath. There are many other things about Charlie Kirk that Adventists do not agree with, but yet because of that we put him on a plateau. Do you think Rahab had an all-encompassing faith, or just one little element there? Did she understand the Sabbath? That's the big key thing for Adventists. If this person believes in the Sabbath, then they're A-okay. Did she understand the Sabbath?
Probably not.
Not that we know of. Probably not. Did she worship idols? Most likely.
But she had in the past at least.
Excuse me?
She had in the past at least, we don't know.
Had in the past, yeah.
May have turned away from
Yeah. There were many things about Rahab that probably would not fit our criteria to be a worshiper of God. She hadn't been exposed to all of that sort of stuff. She didn't know all the finer points, the details. But she had this one event in her life, and she shone at that time.
You gotta remember, she had to actually have a lot of faith in what she was doing, because if she got caught, she was dead.
Oh yeah, right.
So, you know, to say this one little thing, it wasn't a little thing.
Yeah, one big
It was a
thing.
life and death situation.
Right. Can you serve God if you don't know everything about God? Sure you can. We don't know everything about God, don't know a quarter part, and she didn't know all that we know. You know, some of the Bible translators over the years were great brains, people who translated from the Hebrew and the Greek to give us our English translations, and fluent in numerous languages and skills that just boggle my mind. The King James translators were Anglicans, and they were, well, let's put it this way, none of them would pass our muster, our checklist for Seventh-day Adventists. They were, you know, pork eating, pipe smoking, snuff dipping, Sunday keeping, you know, you take the whole list. They don't meet our criteria, but they were used by God at their time to translate the Bible because of their brains and their knowledge of languages. Let's see, where are we in our lesson? Who knows? Let's put it this way. God uses people who are not perfect. In fact, the fact of the matter is that there aren't any perfect people. And God uses us where we are and what we have to work with. And he's not dependent upon us meeting every criteria before he can use us for his cause and we can be a part of his family. Yes, Laura?
And what you're saying here is, we shouldn't judge people by our standards, people that were
Right.
before us.
Amen.
They were living up to all that they knew,
Okay,
and that's all God required of them.
right? Okay.
Are
Yeah,
we living according to all that we know?
Yeah.
If we were to shoulder with those people today, we'd
Well, they'd stink.
yeah, we would distance ourselves
Yeah.
from them because they don't fit any of our standards, or hardly any.
And they may look down at us as being kind of crude too.
Right. God used them with what they had where they were, and their faith in those instances were enough to get them through. Okay. We've got also the story of the Gibeonites. As I say, we skipped over the story of Achan and the slaughter and the destruction of the city of Ai, to go to the story about the Gibeonites. Now, Gibeonites also, with backgrounds that do not meet our standards, also got included, not necessarily in the Hall of Faith exactly the way Rahab did, but the Gibeonites became a part of the nation of Israel after the Babylonian captivity, they came back and they were involved in rebuilding the temple. They became a part of the family. They were accepted. But how did they get there?
Deception.
Deception. Deception. You know, and we almost look at it to say, well, they were smart in what they did. They pulled this deal. Maybe turn with me just a moment to Luke 16. Luke 16 is kind of an interesting comparison. Luke 16, the first 8 verses, Jesus told the disciples there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions, so he called him in and asked him, "What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager anymore." The manager said to himself, "What shall I do now? My master is taking away my job, and I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me in their houses." And the way he's feathering his nest. He called in each one of the master's debtors and asked the first, "How much do you owe my master?" 800 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. And asked the second, "How much do you owe?" 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. And told him, "Take your bill and make it 800. And the master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly, for the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the like." That's kind of a similar. You don't praise him for being deceptive, but you recognize they used their wisdom to better themselves.
Creative thinking.
Creative thinking. And the Gibeonites used some creative thinking. Well, how are we going to deal with this? Instead of just surrendering, they cooked up a scheme and came in with their moldy bread and their ragged clothes and told them, "Well, we've just come from a far off place and you want to say, well, Joshua, you weren't smart enough to figure that out, but they made a deal. They made an agreement, a deal, and when it was an oath, and you know, we don't think much of oaths these days. I don't know anybody making oaths, and you know, Jesus told people, you know, if you can't keep your oath, then don't make it. And here was an oath, an agreement, a contract that Israel and the Gibeonites made to support each other. And when Israel found out the deception that they had, instead of saying, "Hey, we're gonna take you guys out to the woodshed and beat you to a pulp," they said, "No, we made an oath. It's an agreement. It was made in the name of God, and we're going to stand by it." And they became kind of like, well, it says wood choppers and water carriers. In other words, they became servants. They became servants. And by the gift of God, they were saved too. They're still alive, better than the alternative. Okay? And it puts us in, let's see, how do I say this? In a dilemma, you know, the moral dilemma. You know, when you've got two things that are bad, you know, which one do you choose, or how do you face that? do you hold them to, should Joshua have held them to what they had said, or he held himself to what he had said? The Israelites held themselves to the agreement that they had made, even though it was under false pretenses. We have a problem, an expression in English, you know, that a man's word, you know, if you say it, then you mean it. If he's a true man, what he says stands. And they were honest and they were true, and what they said stood, and they stood by it. But it put them in a bind. Okay, now what do we do? How do we treat them? And they became as servants, but they were accepted. And sometimes with that expression, the way that they adapted the situation to make it come out right. I tell you a quick, can't see the time, quick little story. 50 some odd years ago, close to it, when the Loudon Motorcycle Weekend was just in its infancy. Loudon Motorcycle Weekend now became a week in New Hampshire, and you know, it used to be with a few hundred, and then it was a few thousand. Now it's 50,000 Harleys for a week. You know, it is massive. But years ago, a friend of mine named Dave owned some property in Belmont, New Hampshire, just south of just north of Loudon and Laconia, where the bikers congregate. And he owned some property there. It was a worn-out gravel pit. It was an old farm, and it had an old barn on it, you know, with some rusty sheet metal on it, you know, a scrap of a barn. And Loudon Motorcycle Weekend started, and he got a call from the police chief in Belmont, and he said, "You own that property in Belmont where the barn is there?" "Yeah." "Well, we got a problem." Says, "The Hells Angels moved in there. There's probably 100 of them in there. They cut the chain going in, and I don't know what we're going to do." He says, "I don't have enough in the police department to get them out. Maybe I can get the National Guard to help me." And Dave said, "No, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." And the police chief said, "What do you mean you'll take care of it?" He said, "I'll take care of it." So Dave got in his Cadillac and he drove up there, and he stopped at the hardware store on the way by, and he drove in and in his Cadillac, and here's old pickup campers and tents strewed all around, and a bunch of people camping in this old rotten barn with the sheet metal around it and everything, and all these pretty rough crowd. And he rolled the window down, a guy, and he said, who's in charge here?" And the guy points to a pickup camper, and this guy came out of the camper, and he was drinking his beer, and he looked at Dave and said, "Might you be the guy that owns this place?" And he says, "I might be." And he said, "Well, we're in deep trouble," and that's not the word he used, but anyway, we're in deep trouble here. And Dave said, no trouble at all." And the guy said, what do you mean, no trouble?" He says, no, it's no problem. And he said, "But I'll tell you what." And he reached in his shirt pocket, and he had a padlock in his shirt pocket with 2 keys on it. And he took the padlock out, and he ripped one key off and put it in his pocket, and he tossed the padlock and the other key to this guy, and he said, tell you what I'm gonna do. He said, I'm gonna send one of my men up here and he'll set a barrel out by the road with some shovels and rakes in there, and I want you, when you're done, I want you to clean up everything, dig a hole and bury all the trash, and set the barrel back out by the road, and I'll have my man pick it up. And he said, and you put that padlock on the chain when you leave. When you come back next year, you've got the key to it. Now, you know, this was a possible major confrontation. And they came back several years after that, every year. And the same, Dave would have a man set a barrel of tools out there. And they camped there, and it kept all these people out of the motels and other places where they weren't really that welcome. And they weren't doing any real harm to his property. And, you know, it sort of falls in that category that the children of darkness are sometimes smarter than the children of light, because here was a bad situation, and he made it something good, even though it shouldn't have been that way, but it was. And the Israelites were able to do this. In Friday's lesson, there's a quotation there, let's see, half the way down the lesson. No distinction is made on account, no distinction on account of nationality, race, or caste is recognized by God. How do you respond to that?
He loves everyone.
He loves everyone, yeah. Okay. No distinction on account of nationality, race, or caste is recognized by God. How do you translate that into today's situation?
The same rule applies to everybody.
Firm rule applies to everybody. Okay. Okay.
Though we may look different on the outside, God has made us all the same inside.
Okay. Would someone look up Exodus 23 verse 9? Who's got that? Give me a hand. Yo. Exodus 23:9. And somebody else, Deuteronomy 10:19. Go ahead, whoever has Exodus 23:9 first.
Also thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing ye were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Okay. Okay. Don't, have mercy on the strangers, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay. Deuteronomy 10:19. Who has that one?
Love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Okay. Leviticus 19:33. Someone have that one? Leviticus 19:33.
And if a stranger sojourned with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him,
Okay.
not mess with him.
Yeah. How about Ezekiel 47:22? Ezekiel 47:22.
And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you, and to the strangers that sojourn among you, which will beget children among you. And they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. They shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel.
How do we apply that to today's situation? children of Israel had been aliens or illegal aliens, or whatever you want to call it, illegal immigrants, and said, you are to have hospitality for other people from other places. It presents an interesting challenge for our situation today, let's face it. Joshua is a book of grace and mercy, and yet we skipped over those two chapters of Achan and Ai, which were the other side, not grace and mercy. At the same time, their faith is far from perfect. The faith of the chosen people of God is far from perfect too. God's people, where they're at that time, they weren't perfect, we're not perfect. But yet God uses us all in the same scheme and the same plan. The Gibeonites were accepted as part of the nation of Israel, as outsiders, but they were accepted. Rahab was a heathen by all the standards of the day, a very questionable reputation, and illicit background. And face it, look at some of the people around us today, some of our neighbors, and stop and think of them, how would we include them into our faith and into our religious family, looking at how bad their habits and their lifestyle is. But yet God has grace and forgiveness for people in any situation. And that's the point that they're trying to make with these lessons. Somebody else, anything else what did you get from the lesson that I didn't? Yes, Deb.
It's hard for us to always love our neighbors as ourselves, is what Jesus told us to do, and that's kind of what this lesson is about.
Right.
I think a lot of times, I know I fall short, and I think most of us do too.
Right.
From time to time.
Right. Yep. When we drive by the mess, it's generally, boy, what a stinking mess that is, instead of, boy, what can we do to show our love to them? How do we do that?
Kenneth?
Yes. Yes, Bill.
Well, if we have the Holy Spirit, if we've asked for Jesus to come into our hearts, the Holy Spirit dwells within us, then we will be looking at those people as Christ does, or did, and still does. And it doesn't matter who they are, what they've done, or where they are, or how they look, we will see them as potential children of God, potential brothers and sisters.
Okay. Yes. Faith comes by hearing. Faith is based on what they've heard. But John 20, verse 29 says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. In other words, people like Rahab, who didn't have all the background, didn't know all the details from Moses and the Israelites, but yet she still had faith and was accepted. And I'm sure there are people out there that are that have very little knowledge, but yet have some faith in God. Rahab lied to protect the spies, and the Gibeonites lied to protect themselves. And in a way, they are blessed because of their cunningness. Yeah, Cindy.
I was just thinking, we look at people, what are the people seeing in us? Are they seeing Christ, or are they seeing us?
Mm-hmm.
And that, it can go both ways.
It can, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. We look down at them and they may look down at us.
Absolutely. And if Christ is living in us, they're gonna see him, not us, hopefully.
Right, right. Yep. Okay, Deb?
One of the old songs from years ago was, "Does the world see Jesus in you?"
Okay. Okay. All right, anybody else? What else do we get from this lesson? How do we apply it to today?
Sometimes I know people are lying to me. You just know some people are lying. And 9 times out of 10, I just let it go because either they don't know better or it's not worth fighting over. Just let it be, because lying is such a part of culture now. They don't see it as sinning. They don't even know what sin is.
Right.
So, it's just, as long as I speak the truth, I'm responsible for me. And just let them, just don't take things so personally, I guess.
The standards of today culturally are far removed from the standards of a generation or 2 or 3 years, generations ago. Things that we smile at today, where people were horrified at
Yeah.
not too long ago.
And when I know that God's taking care of me, I don't have to go around making sure I'm taking care of myself and all my rights are being respected, and, it's like in traffic and things like that. It's just, somebody cuts you off and it's just, have a nice day. Because you never know what people have gone through.
Right, right. Okay. The story of Rahab and the story of the Gibeonites, there are some parallels. There are some differences. Both of them performed in the service to God in different ways, but yet were included in God's family. And their knowledge was limited, by our standards, it's severely limited, and even by the standards of the Israelites of their day, their knowledge was certainly inadequate. But yet God included them in his family. Which goes to show us a couple of things. Number one, that you don't have to be perfect in order for God to use you. You don't have to be perfect in order for God to save you. God saved Rahab and God saved the Gibeonites. But you have to have that faith or trust and to communicate and to work with God in your situation. And it's not for us to judge. That God is in the judge's seat, we're not. we're in the witness's seat. Yes, Faith?
Something happened this week, as Ed was picking up people's bags of trash. 3 blew off. They were tiny pieces of paper.
Speak right up, I'm hard of hearing
3
here. so-
bags blew off the truck. And
okay.
it was small pieces of paper. They were
Okay.
lightweight. So he got out to retrieve them, and a car sped up, busted the bags open, spread all that over the street.
Oh.
And the man was laughing as he did his doing. So at the end of the week, it took Ed an hour and a half, and he had to recruit his daughter and his 3 grandsons to help him stick by stick. He got all those pieces of paper picked up, taken care of, because the lady was, and always told him to be careful, and so he was. So my lesson at the end of the week was that need for forgiving the guy that did that doing, that he will have some learning to do at the end of his road, or sometime within his road, and to
Right.
forgive that maybe he didn't understand how to be gracious or kind or any of that he has learning to do. And so on my part, hearing the story, at first I was angry, and you turn it around and there's the forgiveness. You forgive that person for that doing.
Right, right. Yep, okay. God has expressed in all of these stories how the gift of forgiveness works. Did Rahab deserve forgiveness? No. Certainly not. Did the Gibeonites deserve it? No, they pulled a fast one. Should have been punished, but no, they made a covenant, an oath, and they agreed, and they protected them. Ms. Maria?
I think with both situations too, it shows that God accepted them right as where they were at that time. And that they both knew God, and in order to get closer to him, they had to change themselves. So
Okay.
they had to redo themselves over to be more godlike.
Okay, there was a growth pattern, obviously, afterward. And we don't know how or what. We don't know any more about Rahab other than this experience. And then, lo and behold, she pops up in Matthew as the mother-in-law of Ruth and an ancestor of Jesus. Well, what took place in between there, we can only speculate. We don't know. But yet she was blessed. I guess our time is up now. Anybody, anything else to add at the end here? Okay, let's bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, for the lessons that we can learn from people who had troubles and difficulties, who didn't know all about you, Lord, but they trusted you with their lives. And you blessed them because that they did. May we trust you each and every day, even though we may not understand everything. But we still want to walk with you and trust you, Lord. Amen.